Good afternoon, class. Today we're going to be talking about strict liability and product liability, Chapter 7. So let's begin. Strict liability. What does it mean? Strict liability will occur when some product or some activity is abnormally dangerous, and therefore, because of the abnormal dangerality of it, the person that is creating the product or that is doing the activity will be held strictly liable if there is any injury occurring from it. So, what is an abnormally dangerous activity? One thing that can be viewed as an abnormally dangerous activity would be blasting. So if you're at a mine site and there is blasting going on, if there is not proper precautions taken, the mine company will be held strictly liable for any injuries that occur because of the blasting that is occurring at the mine site. So, what is the application of strict liability and product liability? 7-1-1B. There are two factors. The manufacturer can better bear the cost of the injury, and the manufacturer is making a profit and therefore should have to bear the cost based on the product that is held to be liable based on the dangerous activity or dangerousness of the product. Based on negligence, what care must be exercised? There are 6 factors in looking at the care that manufacturers must exercise to avoid strict product liability. First, what is the design of the product? Have they taken the proper steps in designing the product? Second, selection of the materials. Were the materials tested, vetted, and are they of the proper weight, proper strength? Are they the proper materials for that product? Appropriate production process. Has there been a guide done, or has anything happened that will show the testing that the company went through in the production process before just producing it? Assembling and testing the product. So after the product has been assembled, after it has gone through the assembly line, has there been testing done to ensure that it is not abnormally dangerous? Is there adequate warnings on the label? And is inspecting and testing on the purchase components used in the product? So let's talk about warnings. Let's use lawnmower as an example. On the top of the deck of a lawnmower, there is a warning that you could lose your fingers and or your toes should you stick your hand under the lawnmower while it is started. The reason for this, there have been incidences where people have lost fingers and toes because there was not this warning. That's why this warning is now on there. That's why most lawnmowers, I believe now all lawnmowers, have what's called a kill switch. So if you let go of the handle, the lawnmower automatically stops, thereby creating a reason to prevent loss of fingers, toes, or bodily injury. What has happened in the past is as somebody was cutting, the lawnmower blade got caught with a clump of grass. As it was running, they lifted it up, they reached underneath, they dislodged it to get that going again, and as it started, it chopped off some of their fingers. That is something we are trying to avoid. Privity of contract is not necessary. What does privity of contract mean? Privity of contract means I contracted with the manufacturer in the first purchase of that lawnmower. If I then, after I purchased it, sell it to another person through a lawn sale or a yard sale, and there's been nothing changed within that product and it harms someone else, it will go back to the manufacturer for strict product liability. I will not be held responsible, the manufacturer will. Cause and fact, or the proximate cause. Is the product the actual cause of the injury? Was it the lawnmower that did it? Let's look at misrepresentation. What is misrepresentation? Misrepresentation is where a product or manufacturer or a individual has misrepresented or told falsities about what the product is or what the product can do. Under strict product liability, let's look at public policy. Again, if you remember, public policy states that the purpose of holding these individuals or companies responsible is for the good of the public. So, what are the threefold assumptions in public policy? First, consumers should be protected against unsafe products. Second, manufacturers and distributors should not escape liability for faulty products simply because they are not in privity of contract. So just because I'm not the first person to buy that machine, that doesn't let the manufacturer off the hook, even though the machine is coming secondhand to me, as long as that machine is the same as it was designed to be. And third, manufacturers and distributors can better bear the costs because the manufacturers and distributors are the ones that are setting the prices, they're making the profit, they have more cash in their pockets. It is deemed that they can better bear the costs than me as an individual secondhand selling that machine. What are the requirements for strict product liability? There are 6 of them. 1, the product must be in a defective condition when the defendant sells it. So I sold it as a manufacturer. There was something wrong with the design or something wrong with the materials. I'll think back to the Ford Pinto. When the Ford Pinto was sold, it had a defective taillight, so if you were turning left and got hit from the rear end, it could burst into flames. The defendant must normally be engaged in the business of selling the product. Ford obviously was in the business of selling cars, was in the business of selling the Ford Pintos. That's why Ford is the one that had to bear the brunt or bear the costs associated with any lawsuits that came from the cars bursting into flames. It must be unreasonably dangerous to the user or consumer because of its defective condition. Again, think back to the Ford Pinto. If you were turning left and got hit from behind, that's when it blew into flames, and that was a defective condition. Therefore, Ford must be held liable. There must be physical harm. So if I get hit from behind and the car blows up and bursts into flames, likelihood is I'm going to be physically harmed. Because of that physical harm, that's what gives me the right to sue Ford over this defective product. Even if I was a secondhand purchaser, even if I bought the car from somebody else and then that happened, it is still Ford's responsibility because there is no requirement for privity of contract between me and Ford. I have the ability or the protections because it was a defective product that was unreasonably dangerous. Fifth, the defective condition must be proximate cause. So the defective condition in this case being the Ford Pinto blowing up and going into flames upon impact, rear end impact, while turning left, while the left turn signal is on. That is the proximate cause. That's what caused my harm. That's what caused my physical harm. Because of that, I have a suit against Ford. The goods must not have been substantially changed. So if I bought it secondhand and the car blew up while turning left because the person I purchased it from had done something to create a spark inside of that, inside the gas tank while turning left, that would take the liability away from Ford and put it onto that second person and onto that person that caused the spark to ignite upon impact because they changed something after the manufacturer. It was a second-hand change. It was not something that the manufacturer had done. When you are in court, you do not need to show what the manner of the defectiveness is, just that it was defective. Unreasonably dangerous products. Um, a court can consider a product so defective as to be an unreasonably dangerous product in either of the 2 following situations. First, the product was dangerous beyond the expectation of an ordinary consumer. So I buy a lawnmower that it's expected that it's going to cut the grass. It's not expected that as I'm cutting the grass, the lawnmower blade's going to become detached and come flying out and hurt me. The less dangerous alternative was economically feasible for the manufacturer, but the manufacturer failed to produce it. So putting on a different nut to make sure that lawnmower blade doesn't come flying out. Or in Ford's case, insulating the wires or moving the gas tank to ensure that it doesn't blow up. Product defects, manufacturing defects, Was there quality control in the testing of these products to make sure that it was defect free, or at least substantially defect free? In some cases, it will require expert testimony to show that the testing done was either inadequate or it was not done properly. That would be a manufacturer's defect. Now, a design defect. A design defect would be, in Ford's case, the design defect was the placement of the gas tank in relation to the turn signal on the left-hand side, thereby causing an explosion upon impact from behind while turning left, or with the left turn signal on, brother. There must be two things. You need two requirements to successfully show design defect: that there was a reasonable alternative, and as a result of the defendant's failure to adopt that alternative, the product was not reasonably safe. Inadequate warnings. What is an inadequate warning? So an inadequate warning, it must tell you what the danger is. It must tell you how to avoid it. It must show you what could potentially happen if you do not avoid this danger. However, if it is an obvious risk, the warnings do not add to the safety. So, for an example, chainsaws do not have to have warnings that tell you that you can cut your leg off. That's an obvious risk. A chainsaw is able to cut through flesh and bone and will be able to cut your leg off. Therefore, it does not need to have this warning on the side of that chainsaw saying, warning, this could potentially cut your leg off. Now let's talk about market share liability. Market share liability states that think tobacco companies, to where you can't fully identify which tobacco company it was that caused the cancer in me, you, whoever it is that has cancer from smoking years ago anymore. This is no longer the case. Because I can't identify the specific tobacco company, each tobacco company is required now to pay into a trust that is based on the market share that tobacco company holds. So RJ Reynolds, if they hold 22% of the tobacco industry, they would have to pay 22% of the damages, and the rest of the 78% would come from the other tobacco companies. Other applications of strict product liability. There will also be strict product liability for the suppliers of component parts, such as brakes. So if I supply brakes to Ford or to Chevy or to Toyota or to Dodge, then I will be I will be held to the strict product liability if it is my brakes that cause the car to not stop, or cause the car or truck to be unreasonably safe. So what are some of the defenses against product liability? The first one is preemption. Preemption is where the government preemptively stops claims from being made. That there was some type of government action in which causes this unreasonably unsafe product to be produced. So the government passes regulations that preemptively stop claims from being made. Assumption of risk. What is assumption of risk? Assumption of risk is you knew what the risks were and you decided to do it anyways. So let's go back to the mine. In the mine, you are invited to go to this mine. You know there is explosions going on in the mine. You know where the explosions are going to be, but you still decide to go to where those explosions are going to be and assume the risk of getting injured from one of these explosions. If you know the risks, you know what the possibilities are, and you voluntarily assume those risks, or voluntarily decide to go anyways, you are taking away the strict product liability, or the strict liability from that company, and you are now allowing and saying, I chose to do this, therefore I will not hold you responsible if I get injured. Product misuse. So let's talk back about the lawnmower. Lawnmowers are designed to cut grass. Lawnmowers are designed to stay on the ground. Now, if I choose that I want to cut my, I don't have my electric clippers for my hedges, but my hedges are getting really long. So I really want to cut down my hedges. All I have is my lawnmower. So I decide I'm going to start my lawnmower. I'm going to hold onto it. And I'm going to hold it up in the air and try and cut the hedges that way. And in doing so, something happens that my son walks past. And as he walks past, he startles me. And I go like this, and the lawnmower falls and hits him on the hand and cuts off his hand. I was misusing the product. I was not using the product in a way in which it was meant to be. Because I was misusing the product, that is a defense against strict product liability. It is not meant for a lawnmower to be used to cut hedges. It's meant for a lawnmower to be on the ground and to cut the ground and to cut the grass on the ground. Let's look at comparative negligence. So we talked about comparative negligence in the past, to where there is comparative and there is comparative and what's the other one, guys? Oh, I hate it when I can't remember things. So there's comparative negligence. Contributory negligence. Comparative negligence takes into account comparing who is more at fault in comparative negligence. If we have comparative negligence, it's computed based on plaintiff and defendant. Whatever the percentage of negligence there is, that's how much you can collect. So if you are negligent 42%, the defendant is 58%, you can collect 58%. You cannot collect the other 42 because the other 42% is yours. Another defense, commonly known dangers. What's a commonly known danger? It's commonly known that explosives are dangerous. It's commonly known that chainsaws can hurt you. It's commonly known that now it's commonly known that Ford Pintos will blow up if you have the left turn signal on and somebody hits you from behind. So if there's a commonly known danger, it's not required to have warnings on those products, because it has been determined that society knows that that is a dangerous activity or a dangerous product, and therefore you're assuming the risk because it's already known what those dangers are. Or a knowledgeable user. So that's the next one. What's a knowledgeable user? We're on page 146 in your book, chapter 7. A knowledgeable user is going to be somebody that has an extraordinary knowledge of that particular product. Case in point might be a carpenter. Carpenter is going to have extra knowledge about circular saws, about jigsaws, depending if they're a rough carpenter or a trim carpenter, hammers, air guns. So they're going to have a knowledge base that is higher than the rest of society. Because their knowledge base is higher, they're held to a higher standard as well. So if they have a higher knowledge base because of their profession or because of some extraordinary knowledge they have gained, they're going to be held to another standard, and they no longer are able to sue for strict product liability if they are injured with one of those. Statutes of limitations. If you remember, we talked about statutes of limitations back in when we were talking about criminality. Statutes of limitations say that if the producer or the manufacturer of this product manufactures, let's say, a lawnmower, and somebody gets injured by that lawnmower today but doesn't sue for, we'll say, 10 years. If they haven't sued within a specified time frame, they have foreclosed or they have given up their right to sue. They have already said, we are done. We don't have to worry about that suit anymore. So with statutes of limitations, the government has decided that after a certain point in time, it is no longer feasible for somebody to sue a manufacturer over these products. The purpose of that is to cut off liability for the manufacturers so that the manufacturers don't have to worry about some product they designed or some product that they had made 30 years ago, because it no longer has, the statute of limitations is beyond what somebody can sue over that. That's all of Chapter 7, guys. This is the first video that I'm posting. However, I will have 4 more videos, approximate same timeline, Same time length. These are much shorter than they would be in class because we don't have the back and forth feedback. If anybody has any questions that arise from these chapters or these lectures, please reach out to me and we will get a discussion board going on Sakai. You will also see on Sakai there will be postings for quiz 2 and then test 2 and test 3. Hope you guys are feeling well. I hope everybody's having fun staying at home and not going anywhere. If there are questions, reach out.